How to install Jenkins on a Mac. Officially, Jenkins can be installed on Linux-based operating systems or on Windows-based operating systems. But sometimes you might just want to go ahead and spin up Jenkins on a Mac. We're going to look at how to do that in this video. So our starting point is that I have a Mac with Monterey installed on it, and I also have Java 11 installed. Now to get started, let's go to jenkins.io, click on the download button, and in our case, we're going to install the stable version of Jenkins, or the Jenkins LTS version. Now, if we scroll down, we can see what the different downloads are for us. You'll notice there's a link for Mac OS, but then you'll also notice that there is a little icon there that looks like some books. And what that means is that this package is supported through a third party. Well, let's look and see what that third party is. And in this case, we're actually using Homebrew to install Jenkins. Now, I've also got Homebrew installed on this Mac, and that's how we're going to install this package. Now, if you've never used Homebrew before, you can install it by going out to brew.sh and follow the instructions there. Now, from this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for the package to install. And if we take a look back at the documentation, we can see the installation is just brew install Jenkins-LTS. Well, what is this Jenkins LTS? If we take a look for Jenkins-LTS, we're going to find the formula for that. And we can see here at the very top, the install command is brew install Jenkins-LTS. Now I want to go in and take a look at the formula for this. And specifically, this formula has a dependency on OpenJDK 17. So what that means is when we install this formula, then Jenkins LTS is going to also install the OpenJDK 17 version of Java. But in my case, I want to run the Tamarin-based version of Java 11. So what we're going to do is first install Jenkins through brew, and then we'll modify the configuration for brew to use my already installed Java 11 version. So let's go over to our command prompt and let's type brew install Jenkins-LTS. And as this runs, what's going to happen is it's going to download the package and then install the package. But before it actually installs the package for Java, since OpenJDK 17 is a dependency, it's first going to install that. And we can see here that the installation has finished. Now notice some of the instructions here at the bottom. When using launchctl, the port will be 8080. That's by default, but we'll be changing that as well. So to start or restart after an upgrade, we'll say brew services restart Jenkins LTS. Or if we don't want to use brew services, we can just manually run the Jenkins process by running this command line. Take a moment and look at this highlighted command. Keep that in mind as we go over into our configuration in a few moments. It will look really familiar. Well, let's take a look and see if the process is even running yet. If we do our PS here and we grep for Jenkins, what we'll see is that the process is not running yet. Let's just go ahead and start it and see what it looks like right out of the box. So we'll say brew services, and we can see right here that the command that we can run, in fact, we're going to run, is restart Jenkins LTS. Now, up to this point, it's never been started, but restart is okay because a restart does a stop and then a start. So we'll say restart Jenkins-LTS. Now, as this process starts, what will happen is when we go into our browser, and in my case, I'm just going to go to localhost 8080 because that's the default because we're using launchctl. I want you to take a look at what it's saying here. We need to first unlock Jenkins because, again, we haven't installed it yet, and that's okay. But notice here that the files will be installed into .jenkins. I don't want to have my Jenkins home directory to be in .jenkins. I want to put it somewhere else completely. So what we're going to do is when we reconfigure this service, we'll set up all of the locations, not only for which version of Java that we want to run, but also where our Jenkins home is going to live. So let's go back over to our command prompt. Let's actually run one more command. Since the service is still running, we can say brew services info Jenkins-LTS. And what it will tell us here is that the process is running and it's also loaded, but it's not schedulable. It's also telling me what user it's running as. So we know the service is actually installed. It's controllable through brew services, but we want to change the configuration of the service. Before we make changes to our configuration file, let's go ahead and stop our service. And let's verify that it's actually been shut down. We'll grep for Jenkins again. Still nothing there. Let's go over to our localhost 8080, refresh that. It's not listening, so that's good. That's what we expect. Now, next up, we're ready to go ahead and change our configuration file. What we need to find is a file that ends in Jenkins-LTS.plist. Now, this could be in numerous places on your machine. It depends on how you have Homebrew installed. In my case, my installation is at opt homebrew seller Jenkins LTS 2361.4, and then the file that we're going to be making a change to is homebrew.mxcl jenkins-lts.plist. Again, your location will vary based on how you have Homebrew installed. Now let's go down to the program arguments section. You'll see that it's an array that starts out with OpenJDK 17. Remember I said a few moments ago that you needed to remember what that command line was. This is that command line separated by spaces. So each string here was a part of that command line. So we can see bin java, and then our -d for SMTP and -jar, and the location for our war file. All of this was in that command line. So what we want to do is we first off want to change which version of Java that we're going to be running. And in my case, I'm going to use Java 11 from Timecodes. And then I'm going to clean up some other options here. So let's go ahead and get rid of, first off, the Java version that's here. And I also don't care about, in my case, this SMTP setting, so I'm going to delete that. I'm going to leave the -jar and the location to the war file. And then I'm going to also delete the listen address. So at this point, the only way this Jenkins controller could be accessed is if I was opening a browser on this local machine, because it's being bound to 127.0.0.1. I want to be able to have it listen on any of the IP addresses that are on this machine. So I'm just going to delete that. And then when it starts up, it's going to bind to the IP address that's on the machine. I will leave the HTTP port as 8080 because that's sort of the normal default. So in the first part of the array, I'm going to go ahead and replace this with the path to my Timecodes 11 installation. I'm going to put in a headless true -d parameter. I'm going to prefer IPv4. I'm going to set my time zones to New York. And then I'm also going to go ahead and set my Jenkins home directory to users dpope my Jenkins. Remember this my Jenkins in just a moment. And then inside of my Jenkins is going to be Jenkins-home. So this is going to be my Jenkins home directory instead of it being user dpope.jenkins. So I'm specifying where I want my Jenkins home to live. And then finally, in this next section, we'll go to the end of this line, I want to go ahead and put in two parameters for the war file. The first one is webroot, where I want my war file to extract, and that's going to be under my Jenkins cache, Jenkins war. And then I also have plugin root, and it's going to be going into my Jenkins cache, Jenkins plugins. So that way, when the war file starts up and the plugins start extracting, instead of extracting inside of the plugins directory, they will extract inside of this plugin root directory. So let's go ahead and clean this up a little bit to get it in alignment. So we'll go back to insert here and do that. And again, it doesn't really matter if you format it, but it's just to keep it a little bit more sane for this recording. We know how everything looks. So we're going to have our version of Java. We're going to specify some -d parameters. Then we specify our -jar, which right after that is the war file. And then we set up the parameters to pass into the war file. And in our case, it's webroot, plugin root, and HTTP port. So everything looks good there. Let's go ahead and save this. And now what we want to do is we want to go ahead and start, or in our case, we'll just do a restart of Jenkins-LTS. So now that has successfully started. Let's cd into the home directory, and let's take a look at our top-level directories. What you can see here is we now have a My Jenkins directory. Remember, I specified that in the plist file. So if we cd into My Jenkins, what we're going to see here is we're going to see our Jenkins home and our cache directory. If we run tree, which I also installed by using brew, we can see here that our location for the Jenkins home directory has exploded already here, and all of our files are ready to go. So in our case right now, here is our Jenkins home directory. And then everything up here is the explosion of the war file into the My Jenkins cache war directory. So let's go back over to our browser and let's refresh this localhost 8080. Now we can see that when we're ready to unlock Jenkins, it's saying, okay, I need you to get me the initial admin password from My Jenkins Jenkins home. That's the location of our Jenkins home directory. So if we come back over here, we'll copy this, go back over to our command prompt, we'll cat that out, we'll grab this value, click on continue, we'll install our suggested plugins, and then we'll create our admin user. And we'll create it with admin, 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 and a.com. Click on Save and Continue. Yes, the instance configuration is fine for that URL, and we'll click on Start Using Jenkins. And now we're logged into our Jenkins controller. If we go into Manage Jenkins and take a look at our system information, what we're going to see here is that our executable war is at opt homebrew, which is what we expected to see because we saw that over in our plist file for the configuration. Our Hudson Plugin Manager workdir, that's our plugin root, is specified for my Jenkins cache Jenkins plugins. And really most importantly for our Java home, we can see that we're running using our Timerin 11 JDK. If you have any questions or comments, you can reach out to us on Twitter at CloudBees. If this video was helpful to you, give us a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to CloudBees TV yet, why not? Take a moment, click on that subscribe button, and then ring that bell, and you'll be notified anytime there's new content available on CloudBees TV. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next video.